And we are live, Energy Week show, Energy Week podcast, Energy Week comedy hour, whatever you might think of this program. Here we are, live and in the flesh. Ryan Ray, Dr. Energy, Dr. Energy. It is nice and cool here in the great state of Texas, mainly because we've had a bunch of thunder showers the past couple of days. How is it on your end of the woods?
We've had so much rain. It's like there are just puddles everywhere. It's hot and muggy, but rainy too. We had such big thunderstorms last night that I was unable to see the gymnastics event finals. I missed Suni Lee's bars routine, which I've already seen twice because I saw both the all round and the team competition. But
Well,
so.
I don't think I watched any Olympics still. Okay, my kids have had it on, and I'll walk through and I'll see it, but I don't. I did see that we lost the Canadians in soccer, and let me tell you something. That's a disappointment to America. We don't lose the Canadians in anything. We beat them in hockey, people. We beat them at their own sport. Okay, we don't lose them in soccer, so that is a disappointment of epic proportions.
I know. Let's see. I've watched tennis, women's tennis. I've watched lots of beach volleyball, badminton, hammer throwing.
Oh,
have you seen hammer throwing? Wow, there's some serious technique to that hammer throwing. Steeplechase. I thought steeplechase was going to be a lot more. I think I thought that it was more like a Tough Mudder competition, like where they actually have to like run through obstacles. Instead, it's just like a race around a track with these things that aren't hurdles, but kind of are hurdles. And then also there's a thing where they have to step in water.
So I'll be honest with you. When you said steeplechase, I thought it was like a reality TV show where they try to find the oldest church and they go from one to one. Like I would have.
I know. I want to know when they were going to like run up the bell tower. They did not.
Yeah, I've never even heard of that. So
it was quite disappointing.
Well,
I mean, it was like a good race and stuff, but it was like not what I thought it was going to be.
Okay.
So on the other hand, that one where they like ride bikes on these things and like do twists, that was terrifying.
Well. Like the BMX stuff. Well, the good news is that it's this Sunday, or is it yesterday? One of the two is the last Sunday without football until February. So like we are here, we are back, we are excited. I don't know how good the Saints will be this year or the Giants, but for now, let us dream, people. Let us dream.
Exactly. Let us dream.
Let us dream for now. We'll deal with the reality of the season here in a few weeks. So, okay.
I'm excited for college football too.
Oh, I'm so excited. I stirred the pot a little bit over the weekend with the college football folk because I said that Oklahoma State is the JV squad compared to Oklahoma. That didn't go over well, but it's fact.
Yeah.
It's a fact. So, I mean, real quick, because this bugs me here. Oklahoma has 40 10-win seasons. OSU has 9. Oklahoma has never lost 10 games in a season. Oklahoma State has. Oklahoma State has played Oklahoma 115 times. They've only beaten them 18 times. 18 out of 115. They don't even have 20 wins against Oklahoma. Bedlam. It ain't no bedlam. It's just JV squad. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, it's people have very strong feelings when it comes to college football.
And I'm not even an Oklahoma fan. It's just facts. That's all it is. So send all your Oklahoma State hate mail to Dr. Energy. She would appreciate that. So okay, and one more quick note.
I'm a Wyoming Cowboys fan.
Hey,
so other than that, I basically just don't root for Alabama.
Well, see, that's the thing. When you're a fan of like the mid majors, it really doesn't matter because if you're a realist, you know your place in the world, which is you're never going to win the big game, but you can enjoy the season and it's fun and it's a chaos. And so, yes, so I can respect that. Okay. All right, let's get into what the people came here for, which I've got.
Not steeplechase
or college football takes, but they got them regardless. Okay, oil prices slide on worries over China economy and higher crude output. Now, this is kind of the counter narrative to what you're hearing from some people, at least, which is I was on the Energy Newsbeat podcast this morning, and he's thinking that the prices are going to go up to 90.
90. I think at this point you have to say triple digits if you want that, like Friday afternoon CNBC segment.
Or the segment, $100 oil. Well, At what point, and so there's kind of how I've dissected it like this, and I'm curious your thoughts. There's kind of two things here, right? At one point, the oil prices get so high, the average consumer has to change their habits. They drive less, they work from home, they don't fly, they buy less groceries, right? They have the consumer demand that will trickle up to oil demand changes.
Yeah.
The other thing is that oil companies at some point will respond differently if the prices get higher. And so if we do get to 90 or to 100, and I kind of use the crazy number 150, which you don't hear very often, but every now and then there's an oilprice.com article saying that. But I kind of use that number this morning, 150. You get to 150, it can't be sustained for a lot of reasons. So I don't know what you're reading the price.
I mean, I think that they're explaining why prices went down today, or they're trying to explain why oil futures dropped. I mean, WTI is now like dropped a little over $1, which is not a huge amount. It's still over 70, still comfortably over 70. But I mean, I think like there's like a contract expiry, and also you have OPEC increasing production this month. So they're going to be increasing this month and basically like every month from now through next May, I guess. We'll see. Increasing. So that's a thing. I mean, then there's like economy. Well, is that like China? It's like there's like Delta fears. I mean, everyone's like up in arms about Delta, and then there's like a couple people on the internet being like, Biden administration is preparing for lockdowns. Personally, I don't think that seems likely, because I think if people were taking it seriously, like we'd see it in the stock market, and the stock market's not crashing. So I don't see that is likely. Gasoline demand is really high. If you look at what Gas Buddy's been saying, it's really interesting, because I was saying earlier in the year, so we saw a really good big jump in gasoline demand right around July 4th. And then the next week it went much lower. And there was concern over, like, was this July 4th thing a fluke, or were we really going to be getting higher? And for a while it was just kind of like, just hanging out there. And now it seems to really be increasing. So, I mean, we've been getting like really high numbers for gasoline demand the past couple of weeks, which I think is a good sign and shows that, people really are traveling more. Of course, this is like it. Like, this is the summer. I mean, school is starting in the South. Some places, I think school started already. Like in some parts of Georgia, it already started. But I think most places in the South, it starts like mid-August, right? Yeah. So I think that we are going to be seeing a drop in gasoline consumption as, people start school and there's less travel, and just, in general, in the autumn, gasoline demand does go down. Like this is the highest we're at.
Yeah. Okay. So you have that, but you also have the TSA numbers, which seem to indicate that Americans are willing to get on the tube and fly all over the country. I think we broke the record for 4 straight days with over 2.2 million people screened by TSA. So to your point about what the Biden administration is saying it's going to do, we don't know, but you kind of have the data, which shows you that there's plenty of Americans who are willing to get out. Listen, if you're going to fly with a mask on, that's about as dedicated as you can be, because those are at minimum an hour, right?
Yeah.
Between 2, 3, 4 hours, you're stuck, you're crammed in there, and you wear the mask. I just went to DC a few weeks ago, and it's like, terrible. So I really had an important meeting I had to go for. I would not fly just to go look at the beach or whatever.
Yeah.
And so the fact that the air traffic is up and people are willing to sit on the tube for a couple hours with a mask on, and sorry to our London folks, it's a different tube here. I think that has to be taken as a positive sign that at least a portion of the country is willing to suffer through the mask mandate requirements, or they're vaccinated, they feel safe. I don't know what it means about why they're willing to do it, but they're willing to do it. And so, barring the government interfering with that and people having the ability to make money, they're willing to do this. And I think that's a good sign for demand recovery, that people are willing to do it continually.
Yeah, definitely. The thing is, even though, 2.whatever million people have been screened, flights are still not back to the same levels and going to the same places.
Sure. Sure.
And evil people like American Airlines are still just canceling flights all the time.
Right.
Whatever reasons.
Right. So
I'm not bitter or anything.
So you have a spot to where you don't have enough flights now, and you don't have enough workers to work the flights. And so if we haven't ruined our economy last year, these would be good problems to have. Like, oh my, you think about it. If everything was, all things were equal, and 2020 wasn't a pandemic year, it was just a normal year, the headlines would be busting right now. American has so many flights, they can't fill them. The workers, what does this mean for the economy? The stock market would be roaring.
Yeah.
Unemployment would be at record lows. It's none of those things. So it's really weird.
Yeah.
None of those things are actually happening, but yet those are still the headlines.
Yeah, the headlines are very quite divorced from the reality. I also though think we should talk about China. So what are the worries over China's economy? So apparently there's some factory activity a survey showing factory activity growing at its slowest pace in 17 months. What I mean, like, how much can we trust this? What does that say for anything? Is China heading into another downturn? It says China's factory activity expanded in July at the slowest pace in nearly a year and a half as higher raw material costs, equipment maintenance, and extreme weather weighed on business activity. So is it I'm wondering, is this temporary? Is this the fact that they just, inflation is hitting them, or, what?
You can only stimulate the economy so much, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and if you go back and read their big paper Chinois last year, they were hiring people to be teachers and all these government jobs and stuff. Well, I think that when you're talking about GDP and employment and stuff like that, you have to be careful about including the government figures. Not the government figures as Chinese, but like the government employment numbers as part of that, because it kind of skews it a little bit. With China, they do a lot of that. And so how much, wealth can they build? The other thing is, historically, they've had, this double-digit GDP growth. Well, their economy wasn't really that robust. And so as it gets more of a first world type economy status, they're going to have the same type of pains that we have and having to respond to it and stuff. And newsflash, communism doesn't work. So, and that's what I always point out to people when they get all up in arms about China. For whatever successes that they've had, and we can talk about those, their misses will be 100 times worse, because that's what government does. It whiffs catastrophically. And so when they try to, as much as they try to manage their economy, their whiffs are going to be really bad. And so, can they keep stimulating? I don't know, but they were buying all the oil when prices were low for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. And I was reading an interesting article. Actually, I only read half of it because it was really long. On what is it? Investing something, business investor, something like that. Business Insider, that was it. And okay, so they had an article like last week or something, basically about like millennials and older millennials, apparently, of which I am one, and how like they have it really hard because they have a ton of debt and they got screwed over by like the recession, and they're getting screwed over again by COVID recession and whatever, just like made me feel validated.
Yeah.
And now they have an article about like Chinese millennials and like what that's like. So, obviously you have to take a lot of stuff with a grain of salt, but it was kind of interesting to read about like a lot of the people they interviewed were saying that like their parents like barely had high school degrees, or their parents were, their issue was like, can we get food on the table? And now they've all gone to college. And that's a huge change. Like that's not the same as millennials in the United States. And I think that we often maybe don't see the fact that like China is definitely at a different economic stage. I was thinking a lot about like Ali Naimi and how he kind of had this vision that like China was going to be the next great market, and he like kind of jumped the gun a little bit. Like then they like pulled back and kind of waited. But yeah, like how long can you actually expect China to grow at the rate that it has been growing?
Yeah.
And how long can China expect that? I think that the bigger question though is how long is China going to expect to have that kind of growth, and how long are they going to try to engineer that?
As long as possible is the answer to the last one.
Yeah.
To your point, and this is a great point to bring up, because Westerners, especially us Americans, and especially us down here in the South, we like to think that everyone wants that liberty, democracy, and stuff like that. Okay, in China, plenty of Chinese people, to your point, their parents and grandparents almost starved to death. People in their family did starve to death. They were living in abject poverty. So the CCP is not viewed as this worst thing ever as we do in the West, because they helped usher forth this area of people living in somewhat decent conditions, first world conditions in a lot of spots. The other thing, though, there was an article in the New York Times, and there was I don't know if it was the millennials or whatever the next generation beneath us is, but they were saying that there's plenty of them who don't want to work because they've kind of grown up with, well, the government does this and the government does that. And so you have all of these people brought out of poverty, but then you have people who are like, well, I'm not really sure what the point of being a kind of a go-getter is now, because what does it do? And the final thing I'll say is, if you look at the top of the Chinese economy, the billionaire class, how China cracks down on them, that's going to stifle growth at some point, right?
Yeah.
Because whether you think being a billionaire is a good thing or a bad thing, I don't have a problem with it, but some people do. But there are people that aspire to that, that most of them don't make it, but a lot of them create a lot of jobs for everyone else. And so if you kind of tell people you can't ever reach that goal, there's no reason to aspire to it. You cut out creativity, entrepreneurship, and all this stuff. So I mean, I'm not nearly as concerned about the Chinese problem as a lot of the commentators are, for a lot of reasons, but this is one of them. So anyways, speaking of China, they're supposed to release 25 to 33 million barrels from a strategic oil reserve in Q4. Big Oren is here patting himself on the back for talking about this all last year. I think he literally had like 7,000 tweets on this very topic. So that's Big Oren. There you go. But they've got to, right? They can't afford not to at this point.
Yeah, I mean, this is a report from S&P Platts, and it basically says the head of Vitol Asia said that they're expecting China to release this from their SPR. He says what did they say? What does this dampen enthusiasm and the prompt spot market for the next few months, but in the longer run, it's good. But what does this do to oil prices? I mean, I think it would probably help them cool off a bit. I think it's China's way of saying, "Oh, too high for us."
So I guess the question is, if you see the prices, I don't think this is enough to put the prices like back down into the 50s, though, right? It's just gonna knock them down some. So at some point, China's playing this game. How long can they play the SPR game? Like how many times can they do this before they eventually have to buy the high priced oil, and then they're in trouble?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think they can do it that much. But I mean, it may like head off $80 oil. I don't know. I mean, it depends. I think and also they're gonna want to refill that SPR.
Right, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah.
So their daily oil use is, do we know what that is? Let's see here. They use 13 million barrels a day, does that sound right?
Something like that, I think.
Okay, so they're releasing 30 million barrels?
Yeah.
So 3 days worth?
Yeah, it's not that much. That's not gonna do anything.
It's not gonna do anything, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe they needed to like do some maintenance in their SPRs. So like, okay, get rid of the oil.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't know how big their SPR is. I think that's the $1 million question, but you can influx some of this, but it's not enough to do much.
Yeah. This is a good quote. So they're talking about Saudi Aramco. It's not likely to significantly raise its crude oil when it releases its OSPs for September this week. Whilst most people's economic models predict that they can put the Arab Light and Arab Medium premium up by 50 cents or more, there is a view that they won't do so, or ought not do so, in order not to send the wrong message as more OPEC and OPEC plus oil comes to the market. Like anyone who uses whilst and ought. So China will be looking very closely to see if Aramco does raise its, to see whilst Aramco raise its OSPs for Arab Medium and Arab Light.
So we're agreeing that China's in trouble. That's the takeaway here.
China's in trouble at some point.
Well, I mean, you talk about inflation, prices going up.
Yeah.
So they can't.
How many cities are they locking down for 2 COVID cases?
Well, you talking about Australia or you talking about China?
No, I just heard China was locking down some city. Australia is called in the military. I don't know what happened to them. They just went full on totalitarian. I don't know.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Okay. All right. Some good news. Exxon and Chevron beat Q2 forecast, but contrast on paying shareholders more. Chevron is doing the buybacks. I guess Exxon is not. I haven't read that they are, so I'm assuming that they're not. Good for Chevron stockholders. Exxon, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was, well, so I don't know. It was interesting because they have huge profits, and what are they doing? They're basically paying down debt, raising their dividend, or buying back shares, and their stock price went down. Or like,
You can't.
what do you want from us? Like,
What do you want?
he must
Yeah,
be
right.
thinking, like, what do you want?
Well, that's the investors that are talking about, the ones that are gonna push it down so those guys can come in and buy it cheaper, not the
Yeah.
ones that actually are holding it. So let's see
Yeah.
here. Exxon over the last week, they're up a nickel, 4 cents. They did drop
Ooh.
though. They were up to 59. They dropped down to 57 and change. So, yeah, this gets my goat. This whole analyst deal. Chevron's up almost 250 on the week. So not this week, but week over week. But the fact that Chevron's buying back stock, that's got to be a good indicator for how strong they think the market is moving forward, though, right?
Possibly. I mean, I think so. I'm a little bit, I think it's time to really get concerned about the fact that they're not putting anything into capex.
Mm.
Like, when are we going to see companies increasing their capex? Like, how high does the oil prices need to be? Or they're just waiting out until they get a new administration who's like, drill, baby, drill, instead of, we wouldn't like you to drill, so we're going to put you in regulatory purgatory.
Well, so let me think here. If you kind of take what you said earlier, which is gasoline demand's going to go down, maybe they're expecting the price to soften by the end of the year, just speculating here. And then they anticipate a rebound as you go into 2022. It's weird to say that, by the way. The 2022 is coming, but 2022 is coming. Maybe they expect the price to be up then, and they invest in capex then. And so, let me ask you this: what motivation do you have to drill if you're them? I mean, okay, taking the money aside, if you think not drilling is going to pump the prices up, then why not hold out?
Well, because like in 5 years, we're going to need more oil. So you got to start your projects now.
Well, okay, for offshore stuff, yeah, for offshore stuff, but not for onshore stuff, though.
Yeah, well, so where are I mean, are they just happy with what they're doing in Guyana, and like Guyana's going to provide everything?
Let me ask you
I
this.
don't know.
Do you think that maybe they're waiting for more shale companies to go belly up and then scoop up some assets?
Well, that's another thing you do when you have a lot of cash. You buy other people. So that's possible. But I don't know. It just doesn't feel like Exxon's thing. Maybe Chevron, but Chevron buy a big company. Didn't they buy a big company recently?
I'm trying to remember if they bought someone or not. Now that you said that, off the top of my head, I don't remember, but maybe so. That sounds somewhat familiar. We were talking about the Anadarko deal this morning, so that's what's on my mind there. But no, I don't remember off the top of my head, but I don't know. Well, I guess we'll find out. I mean, I can't entirely blame them for being a little bit gun shy last year.
Yeah. But I mean, is there anything they can do that will help their share price, or are people just really sour on big oil? Is this the ESG effect?
$150 oil probably will fix a lot of stuff for them. Maybe that's what they're doing. They're like, you know what? We're not going to keep drilling, and then everyone's going to come back and need us.
Yeah. All right. I don't know if that's a strategy, but
yeah, I wouldn't advise it. I wouldn't advise it either. Okay. Let's see here. Behind the rise of U.S. solar power, a mountain of Chinese coal from the Wall Street Journal.
Who knew?
So
if I go and pry the solar panels off of someone's roof, am I going to find coal?
Well, so Blackman had real quick. Did you see his piece in Forbes about coal?
No, I don't read Forbes anymore out of principle.
I know you're I figured your boycott.
X-Forbes. X-Forbesian.
X-Forbes. He had a piece this morning come out about coal and just the amount it's being used globally. And it's weird. We can't escape coal as much as they're talking about getting away from coal.
Yeah, we cannot.
Why
But
is that?
it's because people want cheap solar panels and they're willing to buy them from China, even though they know that China produces them using electricity produced from, as they put it in this article, carbon dioxide belching coal burning plants.
I hope the editor gave them two applause for that. So, do people know that though? Like not the people that are buying them and selling them in the U.S., but does the end consumer understand this?
I don't know. I went to I heard this panel with a guy who basically like does rooftop solar installation in Pennsylvania, and they were like, "Why don't people buy the American-made panels? Why do they keep buying the Chinese ones?" He's like, "We offer them both, and they always choose the Chinese ones just because they want cheaper."
It's weird how that works.
So maybe if they actually presented the coal with the solar panels, then people would realize it. Maybe it's like out of sight, out of mind. The emissions, like if I don't see the emissions, it's okay if they happen over there in China.
Oh,
Except it's not. At least
we need
the
a Surgeon General's warning.
Yeah.
Like this solar panel is coal. Coal could lead to lung disease, heart failure,
and natural disasters that
natural
will like
disasters,
inundate your
global
climate
warming.
change induced natural. Oh yeah, Surgeon General's
A
warning.
Surgeon General's warning on our solar panel.
Perfect on Chinese produced solar panels, and Chinese produced steel, and Chinese produced aluminum, and everything else that they produce in China using coal power. That's it.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah, Surgeon General's warning. Maybe, yeah, Surgeon General, stop issuing COVID proclamations and get on the climate change.
Climate change. Oh, don't worry. Yeah, I don't know if we have a male or female in that position now, but he or she will soon be beyond that. But listen, this isn't going to stop people around the world from buying the solar panels from China, right? So the more you push these solar panels, China's going to sell them to as many people as they can, which means emerging markets like much of Africa, South America, Asia. They're going to buy them because they're cheaper.
Of course, they're going to buy everything from China because it's cheaper.
Yeah,
they're going to buy aluminum for. I mean, they're going to buy everything from China. But here's the thing: there are better alternatives. I mean, for the environment. But if if people want it cheap, then stop complaining about China and stop complaining about China. I mean, I think that they think that people that like somehow John Kerry is going to put a lot of pressure on China to get away from using coal like power plants. And if they think that, then they are kidding themselves. Although I did read this really weird article. It was like, I couldn't figure out from the article whether they were trying to say that China is increasing coal plants or decreasing them, because it was like they're cool on this, and I was like, I couldn't figure it out. I was going to include it, except that it was so confusing. It was like not even worth it. But basically, I think the point they were trying to make is that whatever China promised, or whatever people thought that China promised to do in terms of its climate things, it ain't doing it.
So I did see, I don't remember who put this out, but they put out a report saying that China, their Belt and Road Initiative stuff, they did not fund a coal power plant last year. And so I thought that was interesting. That has nothing to do with what they're doing domestically, but at least externally, they didn't fund one. Now, I don't know, that's just one report. I don't know if it's true or not, but assuming that is true, I don't know what that means. I'm curious to see why they didn't, if there wasn't any people wanting them, which would be weird. But what would be the impetus for something like that?
Yeah, I don't know. So yeah, they're saying part of the effort involves coaxing China, the world's largest emitter, to shift away from coal burning electricity. Well, why would they do that? It's like, unless we say we're not going to buy your products at all.
Well, okay, yeah, I'll tell you another reason why is that as they move their population from kind of this agrarian state to more civilized, the people, as they become more wealthy, started complaining about the air quality. And that's one of the things they had to do with. So as you make your population more wealthy, things like clean water, clean air, all those things become important, which is why we should trade with them more to make their people more wealthy so that their people will go to the government and say, hey, we don't want this anymore. We don't like.
China's totally responsive to the needs of its populace.
Well, it will if they think they're gonna lose power.
So the key would be to somehow like take the green campaign to the people. That's what you're saying.
No, I'm just saying that as their population became more first world, they just didn't want to drink, breathe the smog anymore, and so they put pressure on the government, and the government had to respond. They're not going to respond to Trump or Biden or God help us, John Kerry. Okay, they're not going to respond to those people. They will listen to their own people on some level because their own people do have some power over them. It's a weird concept about the people having power over government. We've kind of forgotten that in some parts of the world. But anyways, I'm looking at you, Australia. Okay. All right. U.S. blames Iran for drone attack on Israel-linked tanker. Okay. I feel like once a month we have an Iranian story with the Israelis, and there's some kind of something going on. Like it feels like once a month something's happening with these two groups, but it's never exactly clear who hacked the lab or whatever. The Iranians are blaming the Israelis. The Israelis are kind of like they're smoking a cigar, like, maybe we're involved. Is this any different?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they think they were involved. I don't know. It seems, I don't know. It's interesting. So apparently, some people died.
Mm-hmm.
I love how they say an Israeli-linked tanker.
That's what I'm saying.
Like an Israeli, it's like an Israeli-linked tanker because,
what does that mean?
I think it means like the company. Okay, it's a Liberian flagged Mercer Street
in the Arabian Sea.
I think the company that owns it is maybe well, I've read Mercer Street is Japanese owned according to Zodiac Maritime, which itself is controlled by Israeli billionaire Eyal Ofer's group. Does Eyal Ofer control Zodiac Maritime or the Japanese?
Yeah, I don't.
I'm actually really confused about how this tanker is actually linked to Israel. And did Iran know that?
Yeah, right. They have what's the Parks and Rec or what's the show with the guy? He's got the wall. Everybody makes the meme. He's looking at all the he's trying to put together conspiracy.
Yes.
Like Iran's got the guy in there with all the strings.
Yeah.
This tanker, they're telling you.
Israel. It's linked. It's linked to Israel. We know it is.
Oh,
yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah. That's what I would be more concerned. I'd be like, are they sure it's linked to Israel as opposed to are they sure it's Iran?
Well, I'm questioning both at this point. I'm questioning both.
Something happened in the Middle East and some people are not happy about it. There you go.
What kind of drone tech? Do we know what kind of drone tech the Iranians have?
I think the Iranians have a lot of drone tech because they like steal it and then try to make it themselves. It's probably not as like good, but I think it's better than what people think.
Yeah, because I saw the story and I was like, you just don't think about Iran and drone attacks like that. This something you don't think a lot about.
You think more about them like running their little boats into
things. I love how you call them the little boats.
Well, apparently the UK and Israel similarly accused Iran of the suspected. Oh, no, sorry, this is the same one. It killed a British national and a Romanian national. So they did kill two people, whoever they are. Possibly Iran, possibly not, possibly just a drone. Yeah, I just, I don't think it's going to cause a big conflagration in the Arabian Sea. But it's always important to keep an eye on like these kinds of things because you never know when they can heat up and the U.S. might, decide to take out some top Iranian guy or Iran might shoot down a passenger plane by accident and actually cause an international issue.
So I'm curious, how do we have video of this, of how it went down?
I don't know. I mean, probably the U.S. does. Says the USS Ronald Reagan and one of its accompanying ships escorted Mercer Street, which was able to operate independently out of the waters. So 2 people died, but apparently the ship could still go.
So I guess I'm confused because when I think about drone strikes, usually they do some real damage, and obviously 2 people dying is not nothing to sneeze at, but it's not, if the U.S. does a drone strike on a tanker, it's
Yeah.
on the ocean. So
Yeah, they clearly didn't blow it up.
yeah, and so it's just kind of, do they have like the Mavic Pro out there, trying to send it or something? I don't. Maybe they're on a little ship. I don't fully understand what's going on here. But to your point, an increase in stuff like this could raise tensions and raise prices theoretically. Let me ask you this: so back in 2019, we kept talking about the Saudis had their the strike on their refinery there when was October. Prices went up for like a week or two, and they came back down. Are we at a spot now to where a strike on something like that would actually put prices through the roof? Because back then prices didn't really respond to stuff like that. So how we think?
Yeah, I think if we saw something like that now, there would be a big spike, and it might not come down as quickly.
Okay. There we go. Okay. Rising gasoline. This is from Axios. Rising gasoline prices signal trouble for climate action.
Yeah, this was I was like, wait, really?
No,
Hold on. I thought they liked the rising gas prices because it made people want to buy EVs. But apparently we were wrong because, okay, here's why. It says if companies cut back on producing oil, but consumers don't cut back on consuming it, demand will exceed supply and prices will shoot up. But as you say, it's bad for our pocketbooks and risks the transition to cleaner energy. Okay, so this seems to be what the logic is. Okay. Companies stop producing as much oil, consumers are still consuming it, so prices are up. Okay, people are paying more for oil, so they don't have as much money to spend on other things for the energy transition, like fancy EVs and retrofitting their houses and solar panels for their roofs. Is that the idea?
I think so.
Because normally the idea is like, oil prices go up and people are like, how can I reduce my electricity consumption? How can I reduce my oil consumption? Maybe an EV makes more sense now. Let me put some solar panels on my roof so that I can cut my electricity bill. I mean, is this an admission that the prices of these things are like, they really are just luxury items? They're always going to be luxury items and there is no cost benefit analysis like that will ever make them good, like there's no point where they'll actually become where like the average person can make the determination that they'll actually save money using them.
Well, if you take what they're saying, you say, okay, well, if oil prices go down, right? So that's the opposite. So if oil prices are high and you're struggling. Well, if oil prices go down, then why would people switch? Which is what you're saying, which is because I've heard the narrative to your point, which is $100 oil is good for renewables. It makes people want to switch.
Yeah.
If you're saying now that it's bad for them, then there is no time because if prices go down, it won't be good either.
Yeah.
So when does it work? And that time doesn't exist apparently.
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, is it just, yeah, exactly. When does that time, when does that time exist? I don't know.
Neither does Axios.
Yeah. It's kind of weird. Okay, so yes, but despite ambitious goals to reduce heat trapping emissions, most countries have actually not passed laws that significantly reduce oil demand by targeting consumers through taxes or mandates. So the governments haven't come down hard enough with their fists on the consumers, so the consumers will keep consuming even though it's higher.
See, this is where I don't understand. Is Axios news or are they news commentary?
Well, this is commentary. This is a column. This is actually
not
news.
Yeah. This is
it's just written.
Amy Harder. Okay.
Yeah, it's just like written in their like weird format.
Okay. But some of their new stuff, I think, talks like this too. Maybe not. Anyways.
Yeah. I was just like, it's interesting that this is the calculus because like that's not what like. Wouldn't you think that like more costly oil would spur more taxes, like more incentives for people? I don't know. I'm not sure that public sentiment generally skews towards concern about energy affordability during periods of economic recessions and instabilities. So so then they're saying that people want affordable stuff. So they're basically just admitting that none of these renewable energies are affordable. Right?
Okay. what they're saying. Needing no more oil and gas is only true if previous actions by governments happen and demand follows that trajectory. That's from the IEA. The sequencing is important. So, in other words, you have to plan out the transition from the government level and enforce it on the consumer level in a sequence that allows for people to transition from oil and gas to EVs or renewables or whatever. And if you don't, it doesn't work, which actually means if you don't subsidize all of this stuff.
Mhm.
So that's the sequencing here. It's not being subsidized enough. So if you subsidize it more, people will switch. If you don't, you won't switch.
Aha.
That's
Okay.
the sequencing.
So
here.
government didn't make it cheap enough, and now people are really okay. Okay, so it's
Yeah.
all the fault of Donald Trump.
Well, I
Quote,
brought that up. Thank you.
And-
And Lincoln.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I don't buy this argument.
Well, I mean, think about this argument in any other context. You know, it's okay. Yeah, I'm gonna get off from okay. We'll move on.
All right. Yeah, we'll move on.
Greenflation threatens to derail climate change action. This is from FT, Financial Times. Greenflation threatens to derail climate change action. Fossil fuels will be needed in the green transition, but vital supplies are being squeezed, Dr. Wald. This is from Morgan Stanley investment manager. What's the cat's name here?
Sharma.
Yeah, Mr. Sharma. The world faces a growing paradox in the campaign to contain climate change. Contain it. Put the
Where are we
box.
going to put it?
I don't know. That's what I'm
Once we
wondering.
contain it.
We're going to put it on one of those little rockets.
We're going to contain it to China, and they're going to have all the climate change, and the rest of us are not.
Listen to this quote. The harder it pushes the transition to a greener economy. Okay. The harder you go to extreme. Here it says, the more expensive the campaign becomes, and the less likely it is to achieve the aim of limiting the worst effects of global warming. Okay, let me just
I can't stand how British people write. I'm sorry. They're like the worst writers. Like, who's the it?
Okay, let me just interject. If that's true, let me just concede your point. Then quit talking about preventing climate change. Okay, let's just figure out how to deal with climate change.
Yeah.
So, like, if what you're saying is true, then just stop and say, okay, mathematically, this won't work. So let's do something different, which is move people inland, figure out new ways to grow crops when it gets hotter, aerate the land, desalinization, all these things.
Yeah.
Figure that out.
Yeah, so new government-directed spending is driving up demand for materials needed to build a cleaner economy. So we are trying to do something about climate change, and we need certain materials for a cleaner economy. So there's higher demand because we're using them, and that's making them more expensive. At the same time, tightening regulation is limiting supply by discouraging investment in mines, smelters, and any source that belches carbon. At the same time, we don't want to destroy the environment, so we don't want people to build mines and the things that we need to produce the things that we claim are going to save us from climate change.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So yeah, my favorite one is where he gives the example of the copper and aluminum, which they pronounce aluminium in Britain.
Oh, I know.
Which I kind of love. Investment in these metals has also been depressed by environmental, social, and governance issues. ESG is depressing investment in copper and aluminum. The world needs more copper to stop global warming. But environmentalists recently helped block a new Alaska mine over rival concerns, the impact on local communities and salmon. Yeah, I remember this. I remember learning about this. So there's I can't remember the name of the mine, but they wanted to build this mine in Alaska, and there's this huge like breeding ground for salmon. And I think the Trump administration ruled no, that they weren't going to ruin it. So, oh my God, we tried to save the salmon, but now we can't get the copper we need to combat climate change. I mean, come on. Like, does anyone buy this argument?
Well, okay. So there's two separate arguments, right? I am happy to hear the argument that the mine might impact the salmon population. Okay, like that's a real possibility. You know, I don't know what's going on here. I'm not saying it is, but there's something there to look at. That's not the same as saying that this magical emissions number that we're trying to project in the world is going to ruin us all in some time in the future, which we've been wrong on historically over and over and over and over and over again, right? And I think that to me is what's so frustrating. Maybe the salmon thing is right. I have no idea. I'm more happy to sit down and have that conversation about localized environmental impacts, because those are things you can look at, you can measure, you can have discussions about. But this broad thing about climate change, it makes it so hard to pin down what exactly it is you're looking at, what you're trying to stop from. And, the final thing I'll say is to get the copper, to go back to the previous piece I think we had or somewhere, you're going to increase the fossil fuel demand, right? Those aren't EV bulldozers. So, you're going to be churning a lot of diesel out to do all that stuff. And so the whole climate change thing is, wherever you want to come in the discussion, whatever solution you want to implement, there are things that you can't do because you did this, you can't do that. That's just how things work. And I don't know why, like, you read these pieces, it's just like, oh man. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, for one, I'm glad that they didn't build that mine where the salmon are. I think that there is real value in protecting our environment.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's a conversation to have. Like, I don't know if they're right or not, because sometimes that stuff is overhyped, but at least me and you could sit down and hear them say, this is where the mine's going. This is where the wastewater's going. This is what's going to go into the river or the water. This is what'll kill the salmon. And we could actually potentially make a determination of whether or not it's a fair argument.
Yeah.
This other stuff, you have no idea.
Yeah. And and it's also, it's just so, like, maybe there are other materials, or maybe copper is an issue because it's mining, but maybe don't buy aluminum that's produced using Chinese coal and buy it from a company that produces it using hydroelectric power.
Or maybe quit sending billionaires to space subsidized by the government.
Oh God, don't even get me started.
Oh gracious, sometimes I can't. I just can't.
Know.
All right, Dr. Wald, I think that is it. Where will you be this week?
Let's see. I will tell our listeners to check out my latest opinion piece on Bloomberg, which is called something that I don't remember right now, but hold on, I'll get it for you in one. It has to do with Biden's trade policy and materials, kind of like what we were talking about, and how the U.S. can build and fight climate change at the same time. We said we should waive Trump-era tariffs on imports of materials that are produced using low carbon intensive methods, because that would promote sustainability, and also we would not use stuff from China. So check out that piece, and I will be on investing.com later this week.
Okay, and I will be on Inside the War Room. I have on the former or current, I don't know, the co-founder of the Tea Party movement coming on, Michael Johns, a former heavyweight boxer, Brittany Franklin with Sky High for Kids. They do great work with cancer, supporting cancer like St. Jude's and stuff. Talk about that. A couple other guests. We'll be talking finally. I've been waiting on this for a long time. Some of the atrocities are going on in West Africa. I have a guest coming on to kind of break down that as well. So a lot of different stuff this week on Inside the War Room. Hope you will check that out. And with that, we'll be back next week.